welcome everyone to today's event. This is our third Startup Global event. So orchestrating your global success, market trends and entry strategies. I'm Isabel Nolan, Program Lead at Startup Canada. You're all very welcome. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I am on today is located on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Also acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples. I encourage you to take a moment today to acknowledge the traditional territories that we're residing on today as well. So today's session is being recorded and live streamed onto Facebook, and the recording will be shared afterwards on our YouTube channel. We invite each of you to introduce yourselves in the chat, connect with each other, and feel free to share your name, organization, and where you're joining in from. So a little bit about Startup Canada. Startup Canada is a national non-for-profit that is the gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're here to connect entrepreneurs with the support, community, and tools that they need to build a successful business in Canada. Since launching in 2012, Startup Canada has grown to support more than 122,000 entrepreneurs annually and an ever-growing grassroots community network from coast to coast to coast. Startup Global is one of Startup Canada's flagship programs that connects a pan-Canadian cohort of entrepreneurs wanting to build a global business with a network of partners dedicated to their success through workshops, boot camps, pitch building, advisory support, digital resources, and more, all housed in an accessible and easy to use online portal. This free program recognizes the importance of exporting to the Canadian economy, celebrates those making waves in the global market, and empowering early stage founders to take their ventures to the international stage. I'd like to take a moment to thank our co-presenting partners, Export Development Canada, or EDC, Trade Commissioner Service, and UPS, and our national community partners, Forum for International Trade Training, or FIT, MasterCard, Scotiabank, eBay, and Google. Today's conversation is focused on how we can best identify potential new markets for your business and develop a market entry strategy to set you up for success in that new market. Today's speakers have an extensive knowledge in both of the areas, and they'll help to break down the key factors to consider when starting this process, as well as providing some resources to support you. So I'd love to introduce you to each of our speakers today. So we have Uche Udeoka, International Growth Consultant at Google, Rahim Motaram, he's also a CITP, and he's a Supply Chain Management Program Coordinator at Trios College. To guide you through today's discussion, I'm honored to introduce you to today's moderator, Eric Aggerman, Strategic Alliance Manager at Export Development Canada. Eric, over to you.
Thank you so much, Isabel, and welcome everyone. I'm really excited to be here today with incredible, speakers here on the startup, journey. Exporting is sometimes something that many founders and entrepreneurs find so daunting. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation to uncover how, as a startup entrepreneur, you can really chart your own success going global. And I'm really honored to have Uche and Rahim join me today. So maybe we can kick things off with a little bit of introduction. Maybe we can start with you, Uche. Please introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, your role at Google.
Thanks, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Uche, and I currently work at Google as an international growth consultant. So I work with Canadian businesses to identify and tap into global high growth markets, and also ensure operational readiness as they do so. So apart from formulating the go-to-market strategy, we also work hand in hand with these businesses to ensure operational readiness in terms of localization, campaign optimization, logistics, payments, and every other operational lever there is. But prior to joining Google, I have worked in the ad tech industry for about 8 years now. Previously, I was at Eskimi, handling operations, business development for West Africa, Nigeria, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Gambia specifically, and had quite a few successes there. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Uche. Rahim, we'll go to you next.
Thank you, Eric. Hello, everyone. My name is Rahim. I'm now working as the Supply Chain Management Program Coordinator at Trios College. I've been involved in international trade for about 15 years, and I've been involved in negotiating and drafting over 160 international contracts with about 25 countries around the globe in export and import. In terms of my education, I have a bachelor's degree in customs clearance and a master's and PhD in marketing. It's an honor to be with you, Eric, today, and thank you for invitation.
Thank you, Rahim. So maybe I can give a little bit of background of myself. So international trade professional, but my passion really lies helping organizations and entities like Startup Canada and working with Canada's startup network to really help the next generation of entrepreneurs, to arm them with the necessary material knowledge and tools and funding to really help them take their businesses abroad. Because as we all know, the world could definitely use more of Canadian innovation and services. So I'm hoping that through today's conversation, if you're an entrepreneur joining us, you'll be inspired to really find the right place as you look to broaden, your reach around the world. So maybe we can kick off with our questions here. We'll start with Uche. Could you please tell us, how can the business really gauge their export readiness? How does one know if they're ready to go global?
Thanks, Eric. I think, first of all, there has to be a stage for preliminary research. There are multiple things to consider before you think of exporting, and I'm sure Rahim and I will touch on that later. But just to quickly answer your question, Google has a free service called Market Finder, which is an excellent service that businesses who are interested in expanding their businesses internationally can use. So Google Market Finder basically provides detailed insights into what markets are best suited for your product and for your service, and also provides useful tools and guides on how to actually prepare your business and successfully market it online. So basically, when you go to Market Finder link, I think it should be maybe the Startup Global team would share with the participants later on. But basically, you're able to choose between two different paths or user journey paths, depending on your export maturity. So if you're thinking of exporting and you're not sure where to start, you can actually start with an export readiness test. So you would be required to put in your website, your URL, and you would be taken through a series of questions. And at the end of that, the Market Finder resource would give you a particular number that gauges how ready your business is for export, ranging from 10% to 100%. And based on that automated report, you would also be given actionable steps on how to successfully make sure that you are ready. Otherwise, you can just go directly into Market Insights. If you know that you're ready, you can just go directly into Market Insights and recommendations, and you can start with there. So I'll say that's a low-hanging fruit, like a first very easy free tool that businesses can just leverage by answering just a few short questions, and you're able to know how ready you are on a scale of 10 to 100 to export your business.
Thank you, Che. I would love to follow up a little bit on that. Like, how would an entrepreneur or a startup, how would they conduct their own market research at the early stage as they're trying to figure out, which market to go to?
Okay, great. So, of course, we have identified Market Finder, which would give you specific markets based on the test that you have done. It would identify, or recommend the top 3, top 5 markets that you could potentially go into. But beyond that, there are multiple free, resources that entrepreneurs can leverage to do their preliminary research. So the first would be your website data. So I'm sure there are lots of data that we can get from our website, also using Google Analytics if you have one. So this would help you identify or understand where traffic is coming from, to your website in terms of the geographical location. So you're able to see certain things like, okay, which country or which geo is driving the most traffic to my website? that's a data point for you. You're also able to gauge and measure the cost of that traffic. What's the CPC looking like? What's the CPMs looking like? You're also able to gauge the average page session. How long do people from these different geographies spend on my website? You use this to gauge and to determine interest in your products and in your services. And this is one data source, which is, it's not a third-party source, it's first-party data, and you can really get a lot of information from that. Secondly, would be, our search engine, Google search engine, which of course, I'm sure many of us in our day-to-day use it to pull various, reports on industry or market trends. You can definitely search, the top markets by your industry or by your product category. So say you are a retailer, or you specialize in jewelries and you're an SME, you're trying to expand, you could just go on Google search and you type like, what are the top markets by demand for jewelries? And you're able to see that there are lots of free resources that you can use there. And also Google Trends. Google Trends would identify what are some of the highest topics, by interest in various locations that you've identified from your website. So just to summarize, I would say website data, which you can glean a lot from Google Analytics. Using search engines, it cannot just be, it doesn't have to only be Google search engine. We've got quite a bit of those. You can also leverage Bing or any other ones that you use, and also Google Trends. These are all free tools and free resources that I believe, you can start from there. And before going into the third-party sources like, Statista and all of those subscription-based data sources, yeah.
That's amazing. These are all incredible tools that I think will be very, very useful for an entrepreneur trying to figure out. But at the same, time, I think it can be sometimes overwhelming. So maybe we'll switch gears and we'll switch to you, Raheem. With all that information that you've gathered through the Google tools, what would you consider to be kind of like the key factors in selecting a good market for a new entrepreneur going global?
Sorry, Eric, if you don't mind, I would like to go back a bit and explain about export readiness assessment. I just suggest that please do not start if you are not ready, because you might destroy some opportunities, some good opportunities, because your website is not good, because your infrastructure is not ready. So simply, if you search ERA or export readiness assessment, we can find a lot of models by which we can evaluate our current situation, and we can know our weaknesses and the strengths. And from there, we can plan. The second point, which I would like to add, is about ITC, International Trade Center, and its tools. We have a lot of good sources of data by TradeMap and MacMap. So if the organizations search these two tools, they can gather a lot of recent information about international trade and about rules and regulations of different countries. These were just two additional points. So back to your question about some factors for selecting a good market. I believe that we cannot follow one predetermined model by which we can rely on 100%. Maybe one model works for me, but it doesn't work for someone else. And the point is that when we are talking about the startups, their businesses are usually technology related. Their products might be new. Even they might have some problems with classifying their product and finding their HS code or harmonized system code, because their products are mostly new. But I believe we can have some specific factors like market size and market growth. So how big is the market that I am looking at? This should be the first factor for selecting a good market, a good target market. And by market size, we shouldn't just consider population. Population is one element. Then we have importation. How much are they importing this product? And I believe per capita consumption. What is the per capita consumption of my product? So maybe some countries' population is low, like for example, some countries in Persian Gulf region, but their purchase power might be very high and their market size might be high despite their population, which is low. So one factor would be market size and growth. The second factor would be, I believe, not based on a priority, but market risk. And by market risk, we mean currency fluctuation risks, especially nowadays. I believe in supply chain, risk is more important than cost. And I think many companies have accepted that. And because of that, they are taking new strategies. So it's better to avoid high risk markets, at least nowadays. We have political risk, we have currency fluctuation risks, we have physical risks, and many other types of risk which should be analyzed. Another factor to make it as easy as possible, I believe, is ease of prospecting. How easy can I find customers? For example, for Canadian companies, I believe US should be the first option and first priority because it is a very large market. We have a lot of similarities and we can find partners easier compared to other countries like European Union. So how easy can we find customers in that specific target market? Another factor would be cultural similarity and acceptance or adoption of our product. Maybe if we go to a country which is somehow similar in terms of culture, with our own country, we can start easier and we can move faster. Another element would be complexity of rules. Some countries' rules and regulations are more complex. It depends on the country, it depends. And we can search MAC map or the market access map in ITC. It's www.intracen.org or org. So we should pay attention to complexity of rules. Another factor might be logistics and ease of using logistics. With some countries, we can ship easier, we can transport easier, we can receive and pay easier, we can do the customs clearance easier, and that would be important. And finally, I believe the readiness of our infrastructure, our website language, catalog language, and some other details might force us to select one specific country as our top priority. So there are a lot of models, but these factors that I said, I believe are more important for startups because they are not able to invest a lot in market research and they need to do it themselves and they need to keep the models as easy as possible, as simple as possible. If you make it complicated, they might become frightened and even not start. So it's better to keep it easy. I hope I've answered your question.
But no, you answered them perfectly. But I really liked, your point of, one site doesn't really fit at all when it comes to going global. It's so critical to really have a deeper understanding. But I think, as we can see in the chat, you really shared some great, factors that are so key to really determine which market to go to. I'll switch to you, Uche. Is there anything you want to add in terms of those factors that an entrepreneur should, consider as part of the research in new market?
Yeah, Rahim has really done an extensive job in covering, like I'll say, the most important things that you need to consider. Just an addendum to what he added. He also touched on localization, but in different pieces. And with localization, we've got 4 different pillars. You've got the language, you've got culture, you've got the people, and then you've got like currency or payments, or how do they relate. He also mentioned something very important, which is the disposable income of your particular market size. You need to understand if, you need to consider that as you go on. So a typical example would be a country like Germany or highly localized countries like, France. When entrepreneurs or startups try to do some research, like Rahim mentioned, yeah, the population might look great and everything might look good, but you need to assess if you are ready to go through with translations in terms of your website information, Are you ready to, localize your currency? Can you accept payment from those currencies? In Germany, Germany is a high proficiency market, for instance, high English proficiency market, but it's not necessarily a high English preference market. So this brings me to the additional factor of your marketing. I am aware that some startups, are doing some campaigns here and there, display ads and all, but are you really speaking and connecting, with your target audience in terms of the language? If 90% of search queries, for instance, in Germany are done in German, but a lot of your content and all of the information you're putting out is in English, then you know that you're missing out on a large segment of your target audience. So you need to consider that. You also need to consider competition. How intense is the competition in where you intend to export into? Rahim mentioned that for most Canadian businesses, of course, the US is like the next market to get into. It's got a lot of things going for it. It's got the population, it's got a high disposable income per capita, you've got high purchasing power and all of that, but it's also a highly competitive market, and this reflects in the costs of running campaigns there. You have lots of big powerhouses there. So you need to consider, am I ready to compete effectively? Do I have the marketing budget that would help me create enough brand awareness to grow in the US? You need to also factor in, Rahim, I think, has already mentioned that risk, which I term like the ease of doing business. The ease of doing business, there are multiple different countries have different rankings, by the World Bank of this is how easy it is to do business here. Cutting across government regulations, like Rahim rightly mentioned, to taxation is another thing to consider. What's the tax system looking like as a business? Does it vary if you are a limited liability company or if you're a PLC? And lastly, I would say market demand. You need to gauge if there's a demand for your product. You can do that by, at Google, we have our partners where we're able to show them what the volume looks like. But I think startups can also do that by doing some research, doing some surveys, trying to gauge if I go in here, I've identified every other thing is a check. But what is the demand size for my product? And that would help you to forecast your growth. How far can I grow? If I go in here and this is a demand, how far can I sustain it? Some demands are seasonal based on the seasonality of the calendar, the different seasons in different countries. So if you have a product, it could spike in a certain period, but then it will tank just because it's not always on. It's got seasonality to it. So you also have to consider that as a factor when you're exporting to a different market.
Oh, amazing. And I think both of you shared some really amazing tools that will be very, very helpful. So we'll check the Startup Canada portal. I think some of those tools might already be there, but the ones that are not available on the portal, we'll make sure that we can send it to people who sign up for this webinar. Thank you both. So maybe we're going to shift our attention a little bit to now that you've done all the research, you've actually identified the market you want to go in. We want to shift to developing the actual market entry strategy. Unfortunately, sometimes, that is mistaken by many as your advertisement strategy, So I want us to kind of really clarify how does one really, develop a market entry strategy, an effective one. So maybe we'll start with you, Rahim, based on your experience and the work you've done. Share with us, what are some of the main strategies and what are the disadvantages and advantages that will come with those strategies as one try to break into a new market?
Eric, one quick suggestion at first. If you guys are trying to search or communicate with your target market, it is highly recommended to communicate in their local language. If you send I have direct experience. If you send an email in Turkish language to a Turkish company, the possibility of getting a reply would be very, very different and higher, of course. And it occurs in many countries, not just in Asia, even in European countries. So in terms of market entry, at first, we have to decide the mode of entry. And it depends on our investment and our strategic goals and our risk acceptance. We have four main types of market entry strategies. I believe the best one would be direct export or exporting. The second one would be investment. The third one would be contractual modes. And the fourth one would be e-commerce or selling directly to consumers via a website, which we can do it easily, but it doesn't work for some types of products. So the first one is exporting. Exporting means I am manufacturing my product here in Canada, and then I find some customers in other countries and sell them. It might be direct export or indirect export. In direct export, I do the marketing. I find one partner in the other market, and I sell them from here. My office is in Canada, and I sell them, and they again resell the product, or they might distribute the product. So one type would be exporting. The other one would be contractual modes, something like licensing or franchising. And this is applicable to specific industries like fast foods, or if you are talking about the startups or technology startups, they might go for licensing, in which they grant their license to another manufacturer in their target market, and manufacturing is somehow transferred to that specific market. It's not a good point for starting, and I don't suggest it for a company who is in the first step. When it comes to investment modes, we have some specific solutions like a wholly owned subsidiary. We go there and we start a new company, a new office. It's ours and we own it. So this needs a lot of investment and it is risky. Again, it's not a good point for starting. So the last point would be e-commerce or selling online, which I think most companies are familiar with. But I guess for 90% of startups and companies, direct export would be the best option. And when it comes to direct export, we have three main solutions. One solution is finding an agent. The other solution is finding a distributor. And finally, finding numerous partners or ordinary customers. They are not our agent, they are not our distributor, they are just a customer, and we might have different customers. And in each of these items, we have a lot of advantages and disadvantages, but mostly we have to pay attention to risk and cost and our strategic goals. Are we planning for immediate profit, or we are planning for a long-term cooperation? And what is the nature of our product and some other features? Maybe in next sections, I think I talked a lot. In next sections, I can explain a bit more.
No, those were very insightful, thoughts there. Thank you, Rahim. So maybe we switch a little bit to Uche. Especially for an early stage startup, how would you say one actually go about in deciding which method, based on some of these strategies that Rahim shared? How would an early stage startup go about in selecting what is the most effective, entry strategy for them?
Well, here I think I would pivot back to Rahim, as it seems like he has much more deeper knowledge of that. Like he said, I think one thing I would say here, it totally depends on the investment that they're willing to make, the risk acceptance, how ready are they to, take the risk, and I would say the model of the business, like the nature of their product or their service. I think those will determine. There is no one size fits all answer to say this is the export, strategy to adopt. But I think I'll let Rahim speak more on that.
All right, back to you, Rahim.
Thank you, Uche. At first, I would like to explain a bit about the difference of agency and distributorship and partnership. In agency, I find one company who works on behalf of me, negotiates with the customers on behalf of me, and if that company is successful, then I, as the principal, will pay a percentage of the sales contract to that specific company. So agents do not take ownership of the product. Distributors buy the product from me and resell the product to the customers. So they take ownership and they pay me directly. The point is that These two contracts are different. I cannot say which one is better than the other one, but I can say that agency contract is useful for those products which are expensive or are manufactured based on order, or they are make to order in their production operations management. So if you have an expensive production line or a new technology which is manufactured based on order, then we need to find an agent, sign an agency contract with that company, and ask them to work on behalf of us. And we pay them a kind of percentage of the sales amount. So these two are different, and we have to select the right one which works for my product and my industry. We have another type, which is partnership. I just find one customer, two customers, 10 customers, and sell them directly. I don't have an agent or a specific distributor. And these contracts have a lot of aspects, like, for example, exclusivity, defining the product, and many other details. One point which should be analyzed is term and termination. How long is the contract valid, and in which situations it might be terminated? So we have to select the right one which works for us. And I think when we go to an international exhibition, before entering into the exhibition, I should have made my decision, and I should have selected the right type of relationship which works for me and works for my product. And in the exhibition, during the exhibition, I should try to achieve that. In terms of selecting one of these, we have to pay attention to a few factors. These are strategic intent, need for control. In some situations, I need to control the price. I need to control the quality because it is my brand, and I don't want a distributor to destroy my brand. Company resources. Some companies are able to invest. Some companies are not able to financially invest in the target market. The nature of product. Transport. For some products, we need complicated transports. They are out of gauge. They need a specific requirements for transportation, like temperature control, and that might affect my strategy. Local government. In some countries, I prefer not to have any investment because of political risks, because of some other factors. Then we have geography and culture. All these factors must be analyzed when we want to select the type or the mode of entry. And I believe in 90%, we can focus on finding an agent or finding a distributorship. I think these two are the best options for startups. If your product is manufactured based on order, try to find an agent. If you finish the product and then you sell it, try to find a distributor. It can be one, two, or even more. It depends on your own strategies. And there are a lot of details in the contract that we can pay attention to and we can discuss if needed.
No, that's a really good point, Rahim. And I think, this is really just a small piece of the whole research that needs to go into. But if I was to maybe follow up a little bit on that, like maybe from an early stage startup perspective, what are some of the risks, that they need to be aware of if they look into hire an agent or look for a distributor? Because, like obviously it comes with a lot of great benefits, leveraging the talent in the foreign market. But just, quickly, maybe, highlight some of the risks that might come with going with a distributor or an agent.
So if we assume that we have talked about the risks of the country, because when we analyze risk, we have different levels. I assume that we have analyzed the country risks like currency exchange and some other factors, and that's okay. We have passed that step. When it comes to the company level and we want to select one specific partner or company, at first we need to pay attention to financial status of that company. Are they financially stable or not? What are their ownerships? Do they own their facility, or it's a rental facility? So their financial stability is one important factor. And we have to do due diligence, because if we sign a contract with a company who is, for example, as Uche mentioned, a limited liability company, and they don't have any real estate or anything which supports their situation, then if they go bankrupt, I can do nothing. So financial stability and financial risk is one aspect. The other one in selecting a good partner, a good agent, or a good distributor is expertise. Some companies might send you an email and simply request for agency because you have a good brand, you have a good international reputation, and they just like to cooperate with you because they need it on their resume. They need to say, I am the agent of company ABC. But when it comes to real business, they cannot work because they have not been in this industry. They are new, they are not experienced. So I think background check, their expertise is really important. And another factor is human resource. Companies can buy new technologies, can buy new softwares, can buy, I can say everything except human resource in short term. Maybe in long term, they can train their human resource, but in short term, they cannot do it. So we need to pay attention to these types of risks. And finally, I believe some physical risks, like their emergency plans, their warehouse systems, their international cargo insurance, and some other factors. And one item would be writing all these details in the contract and also selecting a right Incoterms rule. Which type of Incoterms am I using? Am I setting on the base of FOB, for example, Montreal, or am I setting on the base of DPU, Mumbai in India? So Incoterms can also help us.
No, these were they are really excellent risk factors to be aware of. Maybe I'll leave this one a little bit open. Uche, you can chime in, but Rahim, maybe I'll start off with you. So once one has actually done all these and they've gathered some of their thoughts, how do you go about to actually select a good agent? Are there tools out there or maybe partners out there in the market that one can leverage to help them select a good agent that really matches their product? And this is a question that we got in the chat. So maybe Rahim, if you want to take first swing at this, and then Uche, if you want to share if there are tools from Google that one can use to help them find an agent.
Sure. I have a practical experience, and that was a company. I actually, in that experience, I was requesting for an agency, and the company sent me a file, a PowerPoint file, and simply said, just fill these forms and send it back to me. By filling that form and by filling that business plan, I understand whether you are an expert in this industry, you are good or not. In that file, they asked us about our background. They asked us about our financial stability, for example, turnover in last 5 years. They asked us about our product portfolio. They asked us about our marketing strategy. How are we going to price the product? Who are the main competitors? What are our promotional strategies, and many other details. So I believe when we do a search, we might find many potential agents or distributors. And if you are reputable, they even might find us without needing me to do anything. So if we need to search, at first try to do your search in local languages, and also try to do your search with specific words. For example, I am looking for top 10 distributors of maple syrup in South Africa. It's better to use some expressions like directory, the directory of whatever the product is, instead of list. So good Google search or any other type of search, which we can do. And then doing due diligence and having a clear plan for our expectations. What do I expect my partner to have? Those will help us.
Thank you, Rahim. Uche, if is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so not so much, because within my team we've got experts, consultants who specialize in we call them Global Business Solutions Go. So they help you evaluate, they're more like the Rahims at Google, and they help you to really go deeper into the weeds of all of this. But I'll say one of the tools that I use quite often with my clients, we've got a partner hub that it's more like a hub of different partners that we like introduce or facilitate an introduction with our clients, those who have direct Google support. So in the partner hub, you're able to find, partners in different countries, in different markets that can help with all of the things that, Rahim rightly mentioned, for instance, like an agent, or helping you to access, helping you to the right points. Like, I have done all of this. What do you think, or what is your take on it? On the partner hub, we can also help with governance and localization, which I mentioned before, your communication strategy, brand guidelines, and all of that. So from a Google perspective, I'll say that is one of the resources that we have that can help with that.
Amazing. So
Sorry,
if
Eric.
let's say if there is,
I think Rahim.
I'm so sorry, Eric. Just one additional point.
Yeah, sure.
I
Go ahead.
love to share that because it's really important. Here in Canada, EDC is providing amazing services on this topic. So if you need to do a credit check, if you need to even use some specific insurances, because when it comes to insurance companies provide you with cargo insurance, which they will cover you if anything happens to the goods, but they don't cover you if your buyer doesn't pay you. So EDC services are highly applicable here, and we can use it. And I think we must use it. No, not we can. That's really important. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that was a really good point. And, as a former account manager, I dealt with many entrepreneurs at the early stage of their development as they were going into foreign markets. So I can personally attest, some of the great value that the EDC tools and services really aid, Canadian companies as they really venture into foreign markets. So that was a really good point. I'm glad you brought it up. I just want to be cognizant of some of the questions we have in the chat. So there's a question on advantages, or if there are any special considerations for technology or SaaS companies that they can leverage to deliver their product entirely online. So maybe Uche, question for you: is there any, would you say there are some advantages on some of these companies to deliver their products entirely online?
Yeah, so software as a service, I think it's very interesting, and I work with quite a lot of them in my role at Google. And one of the great things going for those kind of businesses is exactly in its name. It's software. It is not bound by any physical location or geography. It lives on the cloud, like it's online. And with online businesses, there are no boundaries and there are no borders. But in trying to export, that is one of the advantages, like I would say. And that is one of the things that, with that knowledge or with that insight, your website has to be built in a way that customers or your potential customers can easily, one, find information. Two, navigation has to be very simple. We usually recommend our clients to have FAQ buttons or the search buttons right at the top right-hand corner, so people don't have to scramble around your website looking for, how do I ask the questions. Leveraging chatbots also would really help. For people to ask questions on the go, regardless of their geography or like wherever they are in their countries. And also in terms of marketing, it's an advantage because you can run action-based campaigns. I'm sure some of our participants here are familiar with Google AdWords and the multiple campaign models or types that we have. So because your business or product is not bound by logistics, you don't have to ship it anywhere. You can literally run conversion-based campaigns and start getting customers from all over the globe just with a few dollars, at your fingertips. You can leverage video campaigns. You can optimize the measurement type to be cost per conversion or cost per action. At Google, I think last year, we recently launched a campaign type called Performance Max. And what that helps you do is, as opposed to setting up multiple campaigns like display, video, search, and all of that, you launch just one campaign, which is Performance Max, and your ad assets, you provide a few ad assets, and they are served across Google's multiple inventory. So discovery campaigns where your ads are served on both YouTube, discovery, and emails, you get your ads there from just one campaign. Your ads are shown on display sites, your ads are shown on Google search. And so I think that is one tool from a marketing standpoint that, online-based or SaaS companies can actually leverage. So I would say SaaS companies have got a lot of advantage, especially as a startup, because if you've got your CX on lockdown, you have a good customer experience, you've got your customer support also on lock, because support is one very key factor. Take, for instance, the US, which is a country where lots of Canadian businesses go into. We see that the US is a very diverse and multi-ethnic country. You've got as much, and we have the Hispanic community, for instance, that is making up almost more than 50% of all immigrants into the US. And now that is a veritable community of people that you can reach by having customized or localized customer support. So beyond just having someone who speaks English, you could have someone who speaks Spanish. Another example of a country like that is Singapore. Singapore, it has, multiple languages that are spoken there. You've got Malay, you've got the Chinese, they speak Mandarin, they speak a lot of languages. And so if you're a SaaS and you've seen market demand in Singapore, you want to go in there and your customer support doesn't have, those localized languages, you are shortchanging yourself, if that makes sense, which all ties to all we have spoken about from the beginning in terms of readiness. Readiness is not just, oh, I think I've got the marketing budget to go in there, especially as a software as a service. It's like, okay, well, people can, just download my software, they can install it, it's quick, it's easy, but then you're not looking at the nuances of how do they pay for it? Do I have a one-time payment model or do I have a subscription-based model? Because that's one of the challenges I encounter with my clients is that I want to go into a particular country, but I do not know how I would be profitable based on my model. Do you suggest we do a one-time payment so you pay like for a year, or do we do subscription-based? So those are some of the things. I think in what I have said, I have touched on some advantages and disadvantages, but basically in the tech world that we live in, for sure, I would say the advantages are quite higher for a SaaS company.
Oh, that was excellent. And I'll follow up quickly with another question that came through the chat. As a small business owner who might be interested in leveraging some of the consulting services or resources from Google, are these usually a fee, paying services, or are they free services that can be utilized as well?
Also, within my team, we work with just a select group of partners. They don't pay any fee because this is like a value-added service that Google offers as being, partners with Google. I don't have any control over the clients that I manage. Literally, I am given those clients, if that makes sense. But like I mentioned, we have other free resources that you can leverage. I would say Market Finder is very powerful. Recently, we just launched a breakdown in the US by state. So you don't only see information or data about how you can export to the US, but it is also broken down by different states and what are the, purchasing power, what are some of the cultural things in different states. You can also find that there. So I would say if any, startup here wants to get that and don't really haven't been assigned, say, an IGC, which is an international growth consultant, you can use Market Finder because it's a veritable tool. It just encompasses all that we do on a day-to-day basis with our clients. So
perfect.
I hope that answers.
No, that did. That was wonderful. Thank you. So, developing an entry strategy, one component that's so critical is a good understanding of the competition in the foreign market that you're aiming to go in. So I'll start with Rahim. How can Canadian entrepreneurs, really leverage, the market understanding they have in Canada to take it to a foreign market as it relates to competition?
When it comes to competition, some part of that is about my abilities and my sources, and then what's happening in that specific market. I think we again can use some sources like ITC, Google, and I suggest you search the Harvard University Market Complexity Tool, and that will also provide us with a lot of information. So we need to gather information about different aspects of competition and then analyze market. Also on Intrasen or ITC website, we have a specific tool which is about global competition in different markets. And we can analyze some untapped potential in different countries based on our product. So we can leverage all these information and have a clear understanding of what's happening in that specific country. And finally, I believe that we need someone to be able to search based on the local language of that country. And fortunately, here in Canada, we have a lot of people from, I can say, all the countries around the globe. And it's easy to find someone who can speak local languages of every country or some specific countries. So try to employ some people who can search in local languages, because they can find some local websites, which in English, we never find them.
That was awesome. Thank you, Rahim. So, Uche, anything you want to add to in terms of being ready for a very competitive foreign market as a small business owner?
Yeah, I think Rahim has pretty much touched on the most important point. In this area, you've got to leverage a lot of tools at your fingertips. And Google like search is one of the great tools that you can leverage. I already touched on the US in terms of how competitive it is. You can check what the average CPCs are in the US for your particular industry. You can pull reports from third-party sources. Some of them actually like you have to pay. So you've got all these great resources from eMarketer, for instance, or Statista, or a lot of this great. We also have SimilarWeb. These are like fantastic third-party sources that you can use, but they run on some subscription-based model. But I think you can just do a lot of research on what are some of the things my competitors are doing that is giving them an edge. What is their competitive advantage? How do I create a niche? How do I stand out from what is already prevalent? If you don't understand what your competitor's USP is, which is the unique selling point, it will be difficult for you to identify how to make your entry and how to identify your positioning. So competition plays a huge role in one, how do you set your pricing strategy? What pricing strategy are you going to use? Are you using a cost-based model? Are you using a contribution margin-based model? Like, what kind of pricing strategy are you going to use? Knowledge of what competition is doing would help you do that too. It will help you identify the gaps in the market. You have a fantastic product, you have this great tool, you want to expand it, but relative to demand, what is do you have a first mover advantage? Are you going to pioneer this service or this product there? Or do you have people already existing in that space? Are you going into a monopoly market where one person has literally consolidated, demand, and that would be it would be a lot more difficult to penetrate because the monopoly is pretty strong, and you have to then the fourth thing would be your positioning. What do you want to be known or associated with? What do you want your brand to be known for? Are you going in there to like establish brand presence? Is that your first goal? Or are you going in there to just capture category demand first? I want to just get as much traffic to my site. I don't want to go all out and do a huge brand awareness. I just want to be subtle, get organic traffic or get like some reach, and then I set a brand, awareness strategy. So I would say knowledge of your competition, you can leverage all of that to influence all of these things that I talked about: pricing, positioning, if it's a monopoly market, and what kind of strategy you're going with. Are you going with brand awareness full blast, or are you going to be more organic or subtle and build your way up?
No, those were excellent point, and thank you for sharing that. And one last thing maybe I can add based on my experience that I find with some of the entrepreneurs I deal with is a deep understanding of your product, and really showcasing that passion, because I think for many at the startup stage, that passion often is what really can define the value and differentiate your product from others. So when you're going into international market, we often see entrepreneurs being caught up in getting all the others factors, and they forget about the homework on their own story and then the product. So I think that is equally important as you go into an international market. I just want to be cognizant of the time here. So maybe we can wrap it up. I can ask my last question. Maybe we start with Rahim. You've shared a lot of really great insights and tools that anyone looking to go into new markets can utilize. Are there any other tools that maybe perhaps we didn't touch on that could be used? And also, if you were to share your final thoughts on what entrepreneurs can take away from today's conversation, that'll be great.
Thank you, Rick. I suggest that startups work on their website. That's the most important investment in their business, especially nowadays. And it should have some important features like being browser friendly and being mobile friendly. These might be simple, but they really matter. After that, we have some international tools like exhibitions. I suggest that we take a look at auma.de, auma.de. It's a website for gathering information about international exhibitions around the globe. And train your human resource. They are the most important, I can say, asset in your business, because they are doing the communication and everything else. So that's it. Because of time, I'm going to just make it a bit summarized. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rahim. Uche, any final word on what entrepreneurs can take from today's conversation?
I would just say, which is the pillar I've always spoken about, readiness, and ensuring that your business is ready to take on, export if that is the next step in your business. And readiness, like Rahim and I have touched on, cuts across multiple levels: your operations and also your marketing, your budget, your promotional mix. What are some of the things that you would like to, your budget, your investment, your risk acceptance, how averse are you or how open are you to it? So I would say a takeaway would be ensure that you have all your I's dotted and all your T's crossed, and you don't want to create demand for a product that you cannot meet. And you don't want to create an awareness for a product that could backlash on you negatively because you are not adequately prepared to meet the need or the demand. So ensure that you're ready, get on your website, make sure it's very responsive and friendly, especially mobilely adapted, as we know that mobile is is growing at an exponential rate. I would say about 80%. So ensure that your ad is responsive, it fits well on both a desktop and a website, and yeah, invest in your human resources and customer support. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Uche. No, those were really great points, and thank you again, Rahim. In addition to all those tools that were shared, my final word, to entrepreneurs trying to go global is remember to be bold. I mean, you are an entrepreneur for a reason, and you've gotten to this point, and you're doing well in Canada, and leverage partners like Google EDC, because I mean, you don't do well internationally on your own. You have to really find the right partners like TCS, EDC, Google, and many institutional educational institutions that are already in the market that has tools that can certainly help. But again, this is only a 1 hour conversation, so we share the tools, but it is a privilege to speaking to you, Uche and Rahim, and I'll pass it back to Isabel.
Amazing. Thank you so much, each of you. And before I go into my closing remarks, I have a very quick feedback poll that I would love for our attendees to complete if possible. So I'll just launch that there. But yes, thank you all so much. This was an incredibly informative hour, and we packed a lot of information in. So there was a lot of great resources shared by each of our speakers today. So I will collect all of them and send it to everyone afterwards. So we'll package it up for you. So if you missed anything, don't worry, we'll get it to you, because there's some great resources that were shared and some great links as well. So thank you so much to each of our speakers. Thank you, Uche, Rahim, and of course, Eric, for building out a fantastic and well-rounded and informative discussion. It was, yeah, I learned a lot myself. So, and thank you again to our co-presenting partners, EDC, TCS, and UPS, and our national and community partners, FIT, MasterCard, Scotiabank, eBay, and Google. We will be hosting another event with FIT on July 21st. Those details will be coming soon, so keep an eye out for that. But thank you all again for joining today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.